Thanks so much, Shelley, and everybody for coming, and Amaze for having us. So yeah, let me go ahead and open up a video here. Okay. I just wanted to play a little bit of the game so we could know what I'm talking about. What? Yeah, this is the game Kentucky Route Zero that I work on along with my friends Ben Babbitt and Tamas Kemenczy over there. Yeah, I guess it's a pretty dark game, so it's kind of difficult to show in a lot of contexts. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of this point-and-click adventure that has a lot of dialogue, a lot of reading, and also has a lot of strictly visual moments and some strictly textual moments and some strictly sonic moments. And there's a lot of different things that are going on in this game because the three of us that are working on it have like different backgrounds and interests and stuff. And I'm just going to talk about this one kind of narrow slice of this game to the extent that I talk about this game at all today, which is just the writing and mainly the treatment of text, like what you call like the typography or the presentation of text. And when I use the word text today when I'm talking, I'm not using it in the kind of broad 20th century philosophy use of the word text. I'm really using it in the very narrow sense of the word text, where I'm talking about letters that go together to make words. It has a kind of visual presence on a page and stuff. So that's Kersey. It's like really confused about my resolution here. Okay. So before working on Kentucky Route Zero, my background is that I was like a digital artist, software art kind of person. So let me open up some of these here. So here's some of the kind of stuff I was working on. Whoa. So this is an example of a piece that I worked on for a couple of years, 2005 to 2006, 2007 or so. This was a piece called This Text, and it was a sort of concrete poetry piece, ongoing concrete poetry piece where, on that website livejournal.com, they used to have this kind of really cool like fire hose interface where you could see every LiveJournal post sort of scrolling by in real time. It was really exciting because it was a really popular, this was at the sort of peak of the popularity of the platform. And I would just watch this river of text, find interesting phrases that jumped out at me, and take them and kind of remix them into these like concrete poetry pieces. And then post them as comments on the original LiveJournal post, so here's one called A Last Time for Everything. That sounds like that was probably like kind of a sad story, and I just sort of barged in there and posted this concrete poetry. But this one called Oil Paints Are Pretty Hard to Use, sounded like somebody had a bad day with oil paints. And I was having a fun, good day with ASCII art. Another piece that I did a few years later here is called 3 Turk Dreams. And this was a series of text, like kind of dynamic text poem pieces, software pieces that were made using the program the service Mechanical Turk by Amazon, which is this kind of like occasionally gross, problematic, like cloud labor, super late capitalist weirdo thing where you like upload jobs for people to do and pay them pennies to do these different tasks. So I did a series of 3 of these software poems that were made up of tasks I'd assigned, I'd purchased from Mechanical Turk labor, the Mechanical Turk labor cloud, where I asked people to talk about their dreams, and then I would take the dreams and re-upload them and ask other Mechanical Turk workers to do some dream interpretation, ask them to draw scenes from the dreams, and then ask other people to describe the drawings. There was like just a lot of back and forth. And then they were all presented in a sort of installation format using this, kind of one word at a time, really linear time-based kind of drip feed setup and sometimes they're being like sort of scrambled and remixed a little bit. So that's my background and kind of interest in text as a sort of really material medium. And lately, as a game designer, which is something I've only been doing for maybe like 6 years or so, I've been really interested to see text, come back really strong in a really strong way. It's like electronic text work is like really hot right now, largely due to these exciting new tools like Twine and Inkle Writer and some of these other kind of like really interesting dynamic hypertext tools. But also games made with other kind of systems are just using text as like a subject matter. Whoa, I think I got shocked there. Okay. That, or is jet lag? Is that a side effect of jet lag? Like, this is kind of weird. Okay, let's see here. Here's a kind of early example, not so recent, but of a kind of interesting hypertext piece. This is one from 1996, just as a bit of background of like some of this interesting hypertext work now. This is a piece called "My Boyfriend Came Back from the War" by Olia Lealina. It's just made in HTML using frames. And it has this, you kind of just click through on these images and bits of text and get this sort of like interesting kind of cloud story, this sort of like really diffused story about this relationship that is struggling since one member of the relationship went away to war and came back. And it has, because it's frames, right? So each of these individual frames is like another view into a different web page, but they kind of coexist in space. So you kind of end up going down these different textual rabbit holes. But one thing that's really unusual about this piece as a hypertext piece is that it's kind of, your focus kind of splits as you go instead of just like following this one linear path through the hypertext. So I was thinking about this piece this morning, actually. Watching Nina Freeman's talk about her game Freshman Year. Let me open this screenshot. So in Nina's game Freshman Year, you kind of have two threads of a story going. One that's looking down at your phone, and one that's like a sort of narrated. I think or first person. Another one that's like kind of more of like a storytelling setup, and it's used to a really interesting effect where it kind of like highlights the division of attention, which for the character in Nina's story, the division of attention is an important kind of self-defense mechanism where she's kind of like finding refuge in one fork of the textual attention here. Another recent piece that let's see, is this one called. This game called Social Me by Franziska Seiner, who some of y'all here might know. This is a game that, or a software piece or game that a lot of it is about having these different windows open, and there's different conversations that are happening in different windows. And one thing I really like about this piece is the way that you have these chats, like the chats are all pre-scripted, but the way that you get them to play, instead of them just kind of unfolding on their own pace, you put your cursor into the box and just type anything on the keyboard, and they kind of unfold at a natural typing pace, but it's all pre-written, right? So this piece, I think, is an interesting exploration, both of the kind of like diffuse sort of like bits of text floating around us. I think if you think about it, it's kind of always being submerged in all these different textual screens at once, all these different like textual threads at once. That's happening here, but also this is exposes something interesting about the real-timeness of text. That text, the way that we are using it constantly right now, is a kind of time-based phenomenon. It's unfolding as we hammer at the keyboard in this case. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to go back in time a little bit. So yeah, those are I think interesting pieces that are kind of. There's me on the webcam. That's another nice thing about this tool. It uses the webcam. Those are some kind of interesting kind of examinations of the role that this kind of like real-time text is playing in our culture right now. But another really cool thing about recent developments and tools for doing text-based work is that we import, like with something like Twine, we import all of these tools like that are used to do typography on the web, like CSS tools and stuff. So here's Yeah, this is just like somebody's guitar solo demo of like how they can do really interesting motion graphics looking text effects with pure CSS, right? So, this is like a little over the top, but having a ready access to these tools within Twine, to CSS within Twine, because it's really easy to drop in style sheets that you find on the internet or play with them, has meant that like a lot of Twine games have really dynamic and exciting, interesting typography. And I guess I don't have any good examples of that, but from Twine with me, although there's plenty of good examples to look at. But here's a good example of something that wasn't made with Twine that uses interesting typography. This is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho from 1960, not a Twine game. This is the title sequence by Saul Bass, which a lot of Saul Bass's most famous work are these title sequences for Hitchcock films, North by Northwest and Psycho and Vertigo and so on. Just by using this kind of live type, he's doing all this. It's if you've seen the film Psycho, the connection is pretty blunt, right? It's about this sort of like internal schism of identities and stuff, right? But it's really effective, interesting. So we get stuff like this now with Twine. So it's like a really interesting moment for looking at live text stuff. And we do a lot of this in Kentucky Route Zero. I want to show you what I mean. Okay, so we do a lot of like dynamic type, even just within the static text box here. One thing, this is going to be kind of hard to do one-handed, but let me try. Zoom in. Can you see the word zero? How it's got this kind of like cloudy effect, right? So this is one example of a sort of like kinetic type thing that we're doing. Anytime the word zero appears in conversation anywhere in the game, it has this special shader, so it looks like clouds are passing in front of it. And another example is anytime a character is speaking either over a telephone or through a loudspeaker or from a tape recorder, like a recording of speech, it has this sort of like scanline effect across the text. And it's kind of an accident that we ended up being able to do this stuff really easily. It came from we're using Unity, and Unity didn't used to be able to mix like bold and italics and stuff very easily. This was like we've been working on this game for a long time, so this was way back. It didn't used to be easy to do that. Now it's really easy to do that. So we built this like sort of complicated apparatus for doing typesetting and being able to mix in bold and italic characters. I think I have a screenshot of what that looks like. No, it doesn't matter. So anyway, basically, all the bold characters are on one text object, all the italics characters are on another text object, and so on. And it's really easy for us to add layers like that, and we have to add layers like that anytime we want to switch font. And they all line up because all the type is monospace, right? All the characters are fixed width. But what this made really easy to do, kind of by accident, is that we can drop any shader we want onto any of these text objects, and we can have some of the text render with a completely different shader than the rest of the text. Shaders being the bits of code that let you decide how a camera displays a 3D model or a texture in this case. Let's see. Here's another interesting one of these. Whoops. Oh yeah, here's what that looks like. Just if you're curious. So here's the gas station text renderer is this object that does all the type for the gas station. And we have these sub-objects, bold, computer bold, which is the computer font, italic, regular. And then there's this one called spooky. That's just the word zero. That's called the spooky shader in our... let's see. And here's an example from near the end of episode 2, where this character Conway visits this doctor, and the doctor is putting him under with some kind of anesthetic. Where he has to count backwards from 5 while he's waiting for the anesthetic to take effect. And so we have this shader that makes the text progressively like kind of wigglier and harder to read as Conway kind of goes under. And then he starts talking about the details of the bill once it's good and illegible, like that. So yeah, this was kind of like the psycho titles. This was a way of like using type to reflect something about the psychology of the character in a specific moment. Okay, I'm gonna skip some stuff. And then I guess I'll show you another thing about this scene. So also we pay a lot of attention to the rate at which text unfolds within a dialog box. So if you notice, I'm going to just kind of rewind that a little bit so you can watch the timing of how the text plays out. Every character, like every letter and punctuation mark has a built-in timing to it. So like alphanumeric letters are just like almost instantaneous for some text settings, but the game pauses a little bit on every period or comma or semicolon, and it pauses for kind of a while when it gets 3 periods in a row, an ellipsis. So that lets us use punctuation not just sort of syntactically, but also we use punctuation as like an animation system, like a little microlanguage for animation almost, a really, really simple, crude microlanguage for animation, but it's working on both registers at once, right? And this isn't something that we invented by any means. Like you see this in a lot of, especially like Japanese role-playing games where the text box pops up and it's just like 3 dots and it's meant to indicate a pause. And it has a kind of like a bad reputation for being a sort of like goofy writing affectation, but it's really effective, if you look at it in context and bear in mind that text is always like a time-based phenomenon. Even static text on a page is like a time-based phenomenon, as you kind of like parse it linearly, right? Let's see. Some other games that I really like that use that work with the rate of text as their material. This one might be really hard to see. Oh, no, here we go. Okay. This is a game called Q by Stephen Lavelle from, I don't know, maybe 2011, 2012 or something. This is a game about waiting in line to get welfare. I don't know what so you go into the welfare office and take a number, and then you have to wait until your number is called. And the text is kind of always moving forward at this constant rate. In a moment, the number that you've drawn is like up at the top, and you're listening, waiting for your number. There's only like 2 moments of interaction in the game. One is taking the number, and one is like handing in the number when it's time for you to go get interviewed and whatever, rejected for welfare or whatever happens. It's a super interesting text, but kind of what's most interesting formally to me about this game is just this sense of anxiety as the text is kind of always moving forward, and you're forced to kind of pay attention to it because you're waiting to respond to it at some point. So that's Q. That's a really nice one. And then this is Queers in Love at the End of the World by Anthropy from 2013. So this is this apocalyptic love story where you have 10 seconds to interact with your lover. And it's several pages deep. It's fairly long, and you can click through it really quickly. But it's very difficult to get anywhere if you're trying to really follow it within 10 seconds. It has this sense of urgency, and as you move through a few pages into it, and the timer, you have 3 seconds left to read this, understand it, and decide about it. It gets really frantic and energetic, and I find it really ecstatic actually. When the time is getting down really far, and I'm just trying to like do anything with the time that I have left there. So it's a really nice game by Anthropy. I think I'm actually just getting close to being out of time, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to stop there. I wanted to talk about Faulkner, but I definitely don't have time to talk about Faulkner. But you should read Faulkner if you're interested in text and time. He's was the master of that. So yeah, I'll just call it there. And if any questions, like if you maybe feel like these guys, or like this guy. Yeah, we'll do. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, it's a fixed width font, largely for technical reasons, also for design reasons. Because we wanted to do that like type overlay thing, right? They're all fixed width fonts for that reason. It's also kind of interesting that that font was actually designed in Kentucky at IBM. The font is called Letter Gothic. So it has this kind of like interesting regional history for us too. Yeah, otherwise I think Tamas would probably be better suited to answer the specific typography. It's kind of, yeah, I'm not like really a visual designer. My interest in text is more like as a writer or something. But yeah, Tamas can probably give more detail about the choice of font for those aesthetic reasons. I don't know, we just really like it, and it has that interesting historical connection. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't repeat that. Yeah, good. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, please. Mm. Yeah, so the question was that the early kind of tone trailer that we released for the game when we did Kickstarter looked very different, and asking if we had moved to text at some point during the project, made a move towards more text. And for this project, no, it was always kind of a really text-heavy project. Always from the beginning was like about using a lot of typographic conventions from stage plays, printed stage scripts. So it had this kind of had that in it from the start. There was something else in that question I was going to address. Yeah, there were a lot of aesthetic changes that the game went through, but the presence of text like that was not one of them. Yeah, thanks. Any more time? Okay. Okay, thanks very much.